Since 2003, this is The Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
The Sports Source is presented by Junk Be Gone, Pipe Wrench, and the Garza Law Firm.
The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Sports Source here in the Junk Be Gone studios. What a game yesterday by Chaz Lanier. What a clutch into the game by Zakai Zeigler. What a big win for Tennessee down at Texas A&M. We will break that down. We will get into the NCAA tournament. We'll show you the latest projections. Where does Tennessee sit? We'll look at who they are competing with for a 1 seed. Can they still get there? We'll look at all those schedules of who you're battling. We'll also shift it on over. Nebraska canceled the series with Tennessee this week. It made Danny White mad. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about a whole lot of stuff. The SEC is looking at some potential big changes for the playoff for, well, I don't guess it's a playoff, but a play-in for the SEC. We'll explain that. Whole lot of stuff in today's show. Let's get into it. First segment of this show brought to you by the Garza Law Firm. Folks, when you need an attorney, there's nothing more important in the world than finding a good one with a long track record of success and a history and rapport with the judges and attorneys and prosecutors in the local legal system. That's why so many here in East Tennessee turn to Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm. They are the experts here. They have been for a long time, and they are part of this community. GarzaLaw.com to learn more. Check them out. We appreciate them being part of this show each and every week, the Garza Law Firm. All right, here's some other guys I appreciate being here. Not every week, but whenever you're here, I appreciate you being here. Jimmy Himes right there. Will West right there. Former D1 basketball player, former UT assistant coach Mark Pankratz right there. And Chuck Cavaleris right down there on the end. Thank you all for being here. Texas A&M won a lot of battles yesterday, but they lost the war. Texas A&M won right after we said last week, boy, you look at the numbers, the most important stat is points in the paint. A&M won points in the paint yesterday. A&M won second chance points. A&M had more fast break points. A&M had more offensive rebounds, more defensive rebounds, more assists. Tennessee was called for more fouls. Well, clearly, you know the outcome. Well, there was one stat that mattered more. Tennessee shot 48% from three, while Texas A&M shot 16.5. 13 made threes versus 5 for the Aggies. The Vols won the war. Mark Pankratz, top takeaways from yesterday's ball game.
Well, a great game like you started out the show with. The guys, everybody competed. The difference you look at, I mean, we could talk about Chaz making three-pointers, but I look at, Wade Taylor, potential SEC player of the year, look at his stat line, 0 for 9 from 3, and then you look at Zakai Zeigler down the stretch and what he did in that second half. In this team, it continues to be resilient. And you're down 9 points in the first half on the road against a top 10 team in the country, and we continue to battle back. Texas A&M, they looked at what they do best is offensive rebound, and they attack downhill. And our will of defensive ability to guard guys one-on-one showed itself last night. And then our ability to compete down low. Despite Igor being in foul trouble, despite Akbar having some foul trouble, we continue to show up. We'll talk about the offense, but again, that's a defensive win in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I tell you what, that was a Hall of Fame inbounds play at the end. Didn't you think so? The lineup with 3 across the lane made it look like it might be throwing it in to Akpara, or you're going to set a screen for Lanier. Instead, Zakai pops out. You punk Wade Taylor. He gets caught looking back. Zakai hits the 3. That's one of the best inbounds play under your own bucket I've ever seen.
It is because he made it. Because if he didn't make it, we're sitting here saying,
why did Zakai
do it?
Like after the other game, why did Zakai get the last shot?
The play was designed for Akbar to get the lob,
Right.
get the tip, and they just didn't give him the good position. And, Zakai just continues to show up.
And
his
one
method.
last thing.
Good play.
When was the last time Tennessee goes on the road and hits 18 out of 20 free throws? And your only 2 misses were by really your best free throw shooter, Zakai. You shoot 90% on the road. I don't know how often that's happened.
Or shoot 50% from 3 with this bunch. So, Will and Jimmy, top takeaways.
It was three-point shooting to me, the big difference. You talked about all the battles that A&M won, but the difference was Tennessee made 24 more points on three-point shots. They made 13-5. A&M went into the game as the worst three-point shooting team in the SEC, and they were 5 of 30. Now, they also went in as the worst free throw shooting team, and they were 18 out of 20, so that didn't hold. But I just thought the difference was the three-point shooting, the ones that Tennessee made. That was a difference in the game. It overcame the fact that they lost the battle on the boards, that they lost the points in the paint, the other things. And a lot of that had to do with not just Lanier, but Zakai Ziegler hit a couple of threes, a big one we just talked about, and Gainey hit 2 threes and 2 free throws in the last 3:33. Those were big points for Tennessee.
I thought it was more than just make or miss, though, because I thought, I mean, yes, it's make or miss. You made shots, they missed shots. They're the worst shooting team in the SEC.
Which we showed last week,
Yes.
by the way, that one thing to look forward to the last 5 games for Tennessee is 4 of the teams you play shoot worse than you.
So that helped. But I also thought early on Tennessee, I thought they were flat. I thought they were a little apprehensive to take open shots, and maybe it's because you've shot so poorly, in the month of February and in January. I also thought that defensively you were really flat early on. And if you saw, A&M started out shooting pretty darn well. Tennessee was able to pick that up midway through the first half. I thought they closed out better once they kind of got a little time out under their belt. I thought that they did a much better job of the rotation whenever A&M would start coming forward. And I thought they started, when they did move the ball side to side, you had an open shot, they started taking it. Chaz started taking them instead of being apprehensive. And when you can make those shots, the problem is they don't always make those shots, and your guards shoot you out of games. But I do think that last night or yesterday they were hitting them, so why be apprehensive? And once they got going, they took over the lead, they didn't really look back.
I think this time you're like, we knew that they were going to drive the ball downhill. That's what Texas A&M does. But when you're not getting as much reps in practice this time of year, it's hard to duplicate how fast and tough those guys drive it. We did a good job defensively, really shrinking the gaps, guarding the paint, making them kick it out. They did make some early shots because of some good action that they had on the backside, where we had some mismatches defensively. We had, say, Igor guarding Taylor at times, and he can drive by him better than he can Meshack or Zakai. So give Texas A&M credit. I do think we made some adjustments. The big thing for Chaz is he's starting to get away from some of that screening action. Like you talk about Barnes all year has been saying he's been getting grabbed and held and can't get away from screens. He's starting to get a little bit more separation, and with that quick release, he doesn't need much to let it fly.
Well, let's continue right there. We got a graphic I want to put up if we can get to it about Zakai Ziegler and Chaz Lanier. Getting hot at the right time. Chaz Lanier over his last 4 games is averaging 20.5 points per game. That's 3 above his season average. And Zakai Ziegler, his last 6 games, up to 18.6 points per game. The last 6 games, that is more than 5 points above his season average.
And
Those
he's
two
now
are hot
shooting.
at the right time.
He's now shooting 37% from 3 in SEC play.
And he's doing it after not a very good, poor first half, right? I mean, he's had like back-to-back games, it seems like, where he didn't do a whole lot in the first half. And the announcers are kind of begging on him to be more aggressive. And he does that in the second half. And I think, a game or so ago, scored all 22 in the second half. And yesterday only had 3 at halftime and did a lot of that scoring.
Yep.
Another thing, too, and Barnes pointed this out, for Meshack to have some of the struggles he's had, and he's hit a big 3 in a recent game, he had 2 tip-ins that Barnes said he thought were the difference in the game, huge plays. One of them was a double tip. So, and then on the plus-minus that I always check, Gainey, Jimmy, was plus 15. Meshack was plus 12. So when they're on the court, Tennessee's outscoring their opponents, and that's just showing how valuable they are.
Well, the other part, and this goes to what Mark said about defense, the 2 best scorers for A&M were 1 out of 16 on threes.
Yeah.
So that certainly helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Let's put up the Chaz Lanier shot chart if we can, just from yesterday. Not sure if we have that ready or not, but anyway, just so you can see where he was making and missing from. Are you feeling more? Do you think he's getting more confidence? Because a few weeks ago, I think we would have questioned his confidence level. Do we think that's improving now, or is it just when your shots fell the last couple of weeks? We'll see.
I think it's just shots, Phil. At the end of the day, I do think that there seems to be a little more space for him, and they're moving. They're not trying to win those Kevin O'Neal 62-58 games anymore. They're trying to get up to 70, and I think that does allow for more space to be there.
I think you're putting about 10 points on the Kevin O'Neal
That's
scores.
probably true. It's probably true. More console ball.
52-48. Yeah.
But I think that helps. I think Chaz's problem is he needs to play in space. And it's been a struggle for him as they try to grind things out and play 1988 Gene Katie basketball.
And don't forget that left-handed driving dunk he had. To me, was like one of the plays of the year, too. I mean, that was great to see. He's not just making threes. He took it to the rim, and he's been doing that a little bit more the past few games.
I think it's confidence, though. I'll say that because Ziegler even said the other day that he was a guy that would pass up shots if he missed the first couple of shots. He said, unlike Dalton Connett, who would keep firing it away, Lanier would say, "Oh, I'm off. I'm not going to shoot it." And I think Ziegler told him, he said, "No, you got to keep doing that.
Shoot your way out."
Yeah.
Yes, and I think he's done that, and I think confidence has a lot to do with it right now.
I think this was also a good. You saw the bench points. You talked about those guys being ready. You talk about Chaz's ability, it shows the value of rest, right? Like we didn't
Oh,
have a
yeah.
game
Great
early in the
point.
week,
Great point.
and so this is why we're going to talk about seeding later in the show. Rest is a big thing for this team, and you got to get that bye in the SEC tournament.
double
So
bye if you
double
grab
bye
it,
is
yeah.
huge for this basketball team because it shows when you got legs, when you're able to sit down and guard the way that they
Right.
guarded down the stretch, make big plays, make free throws. That a lot of that had to do, I think, with a midweek break.
Very good. Okay. Let's welcome in the next member of our panel. Right there in his Sports Source Digital Network hat. I would never allow a hat on this segment, on this show, except when a man goes 4-0 on his sports gambling show on our new YouTube channel. If you're not watching on YouTube and playing along with him, you're wasting money. You're not, it's a great retirement plan. That's an exaggeration. 4-0, Tyler Ivins. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job. All right. Check him out. The show is called Action. It's on the Sports Source Digital Network, which is just our YouTube channel. Go find it. All right. Take a look at the two most recent updates as of early yesterday morning, the full bracket. Now, I know Lunardi then puts up an updated just spread list, but this is the actual bracket he put up. Let's pop this for Lunardi and Palm, and there you go. They both have Tennessee as a number 2 seed in the East region. That's the Newark region. They both have them starting in Cleveland now. They were starting in Raleigh, now in Cleveland. They're both the 2nd seed to Duke, who's the number 1 seed. Lunardi has them play, they both play Central Connecticut State. In one bracket, Lunardi has them or if they advance, they would play the winner of West Virginia and St. Mary's, who this week had a big write-up in The Athletic about how they look like the Cinderella of the entire tournament. So, whoops. And then on the other side, it would be the winner of Oregon and BYU. And Oregon, I believe, knocked off Wisconsin yesterday.
Right.
So all these teams in the tournament are dangerous. But here's the interesting thing. You look up there, the 4 top seeds under each of these regions. In one of them, it's Duke, Tennessee, Texas Tech, and Purdue. Not interested in seeing Purdue. Tennessee has lost their last 3 straight games to Purdue, including 2 times they've been put out of the NCAA tournament by Purdue. On the other side, Jerry Palm has them with Duke. Tennessee's the 2 seed, Michigan's the 3 seed, and Missouri's the 4 seed. No interest in seeing Michigan. You were 0-3 in your last 3 games against Michigan, and they all happen to be you're out of the NCAA tournament. So Purdue and Michigan have put you out of 5 NCAA tournaments. I don't think you want to see either of those, but let me get your reactions. Tyler, you're new to the panel today. Thoughts on where Tennessee is seated right now and what that looks like?
So from the Palm standpoint, we brought up already Oregon, great come-from-behind victory in Madison in overtime. BYU, outright winners last night in Tucson against Arizona with a massive upset. I think right now, if I'm Tennessee, there are a couple things that I need to weigh, and Mark brought it up last segment. Do you want to be the 1 seed and maybe get out from under some of these other matchups with a potential Purdue or a Michigan, as you pointed out? Or do you want to catch yourself catching a little bit of extra time and maybe being squeezed out as a 2 seed depending on how Nashville plays out over the next couple of weeks? For me right now, Tennessee, their ceiling, in my eyes, even though they're catching a little bit of consistency, ceiling is the Sweet 16. Now, we can have another conversation another time about being a 1 seed compared to a 2 seed, maybe struggling and slipping to a 3 to determine if maybe it would grow or decrease your chances. But the Vols right now, more rest, more efficiency, potentially better than a Sweet 16.
Well, let me throw this one out. Ken Pomeroy, they've raised like 9 slots since last week's now in offensive efficiency. They're hovering near the magic 25 spot. They're about 27 or 28, so just telling you. Thoughts on what Tyler said and what you think about the brackets?
Yeah, and I looked at the schedule down the stretch. I mean, you're going to have some games that are obviously the Alabama game is going to be big.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next.
I really think that this team is finding its stride, but we're such at a delicate spot of whether we stay healthy. Obviously, we got to make shots. In our inside presence. I'm interested. We've talked about Igor being such a key all season long.
Goodness.
But then again, 18 minutes last night. I mean, we get the win. But for us to make a Final Four run and get beyond the Sweet 16, Igor's got to give us more.
Do you, back to the bracket thing just for a second, when you guys were coaching, are you guys looking at this stuff?
No.
Nobody's paying any attention to Lunardi and Palmer or any of that stuff?
No, I mean, like you mentioned before, I mean, we were in Raleigh before.
Yeah.
It's
Too
so
far out.
Yeah.
It switches.
Right.
There's also, this is a weird year. There are a lot of pretty good teams in college basketball. It would be like a year if you had like one 11-1 team at the top of the poll in college football and then a bunch of 9-3 teams. You have a bunch of 21-5 teams right now in college basketball that I think are all on a given night could beat each other. So, like, I would be terrified to play that BYU team. Like, that is a scary, scary proposition. They are good. 7 seed St. Mary's. I don't know if I believe they'd beat that 10 seed BYU team, but I think that being a 1 seed, being a 2 seed, I don't know that it necessarily matters because I just think there's a depth of really good teams in college basketball this year that could all knock each other off depending on if you make or miss.
Tennessee a 2 seed by both of those guys. Reactions?
I would prefer Lenardi's avenue because if you're good enough like BYU to go on the road and get a win at Arizona, if you're good enough like Oregon to go on the road and beat Wisconsin when you were down by double digits, that's a pretty good. You're pretty good. Their ceiling looks to be higher to me than St. Mary's in West Virginia, so I would prefer to be in Lenardi's bracket.
Okay. All right, and just for the record, I will throw this out there. The selection committee last week had Tennessee as number 5, the first number 2 seed. Number 5 is the first number 2 seed. I'm sure you follow that math, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th team gets the 2 seed. Bracket Matrix, which takes an overview of 100 different bracket projections. Tennessee's the 6th seed there. Now, Lunardi still has Tennessee as his 5th seed overall, but most of those projections out there, according to Bracket Matrix, they've shifted Tennessee below Houston to where they're number 6. Let's take a look. We got a poll question to put in here. What is your favorite thing about this Vols team? And that has shifted. It started, people are already online playing it. Your options are Rick Barnes, which is now in the lead, 48%. Rick Barnes, Zakai Ziegler, which was in the lead earlier. Defense, that's way behind. And the team's character, it's moxie. The cut of its jib, that's way behind too. So Barnes leading Ziegler. What is your favorite thing about this team? Brought to you by Hearthside Bank. Go ahead, take your smartphone, click that QR code, and play along with us. Tell us what you think. We love playing the polls and figuring out what our viewers are thinking. All right, take a look at this next graphic here. These are the top 8 seeds according to Bracket Matrix, okay? Auburn, Duke, Florida, Alabama, and then Houston, as I mentioned in that last segment, Tennessee, Wisconsin, and Texas A&M. The top 6 teams all won yesterday. You see at means away. Home doesn't have anything. But the reason you got a color-coded thing there, those are teams that are in the Ken Pomeroy top 25. So you can see those are the teams that would give you probably a little bit more of a bounce with the committee. Those are the teams that could be tougher. Auburn plays 4 of those teams. They got a tough stretch down the road. Tougher than anybody. The easiest, Duke. All right, they don't play anybody top 25 the rest of the way. So I think when you're looking at that and what we're doing here, I think we can all pencil Duke in as a number 1 seed, correct?
Correct.
And I think with Auburn's body of work, unless they go in an absolute tanking position here at the end, and I don't anticipate that, we can probably pencil them as a 1 seed too. Everybody agreed?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Florida, I'm not there yet. If they tank, we'll see. Alabama and Tennessee, I think they're the exact same team. I think it's going to come down to how they do against each other.
Who wins, yeah.
Yeah. Then you got Houston in there. But when you're looking at that list and you're looking at who Tennessee's having to compete with, I think Auburn and Duke, there's 2 number 1 seeds left, and I think it's Florida, Alabama, Houston, and Tennessee. I don't think Wisconsin and A&M can jump it.
No.
So, I mean, you got a 50-50 chance.
You do. I think Florida's probably pretty locked in there unless they lose both A&M and Alabama and also lose early in the tournament. But I think Alabama, Houston, Tennessee are jockeying for 1.
So you think it's 1 of 3?
I think it's 1 of 3 for 1 spot. 3 teams for 1 spot right now, and I think the winner of Tennessee, Alabama has the best shot to get it.
For some reason in my head, I just don't put Florida up there as good as Duke and Auburn, but their record certainly shows it.
Can I go with a little bit of, trivia, little history?
No.
Florida earlier this year became only the 5th team in college hoops history to own a number 1 victory at home and own a number 1 victory on the road. 3 of those previous 4 teams who did it, would later go on to be number 1 overall seeds. I'm not saying that that's the criteria,
that's excellent.
but that's a little bit of a path of future past.
Then let's go ahead and put the top 3 in there as 1 seed. So that leaves us with Alabama, Houston, and Tennessee. Let's just put them all kind of tied right now because I think they all are right neck and neck with each other.
I'll go with that.
Who's got the easiest path?
I'll say
Tennessee does.
I think it's the Vols. Yeah.
Tennessee
it's the
does.
Vols.
Now, we're just talking about through the regular season. We're not talking about tournament.
And you know the reason why? Because I think their biggest matchup still remaining, they get at the friendly confines
get
of
it
Bama
home.
coming here.
Yeah.
LSU and South Carolina are garbage, and then Mississippi is up and down. Houston, Texas Tech's a good team. Kansas, they still have talent. Baylor still has talent, whether they're playing up to it right now.
Agree.
I do believe the committee's going to want to put a another team besides, and not 3 SEC teams as 1 seeds
Yes.
if they have the opportunity. So I think Houston's going to have to lose this to not be a 1 seed at the end of the day.
Well, they've got Duke. You've
They-
got Duke already in there.
You
so
do.
that would take care of that.
I just don't know that they want 3 SEC teams as 1 seed.
Oh, 3. Okay, I thought you were
So,
saying 4.
but I think if you do 2 SEC, ACC, Big 12, I think the committee, if they get the opportunity, will do that.
I could see them doing 3.
So this is how it comes down to me. I think you're right about the Bama-Tennessee matchup. Winner of that game coming up, they end up getting the lead. I think eventually, though, Houston's going to run through the Big 12 and get that auto bid and become the 1 seed anyway. When it's
go.
all said and done, give me Auburn, give me Duke, give me Florida, give me Houston as the 1 seeds.
Mark, you're being quiet and you're the most knowledgeable man.
I think that this is going to be an interesting look to see how much they value the SEC tournament, because you're going to have a lot of teams like you see here in the SEC that are playing. And if they get out in the first round like Tennessee did last year to Mississippi State, regardless of what we do here, does that affect it?
Yeah.
If Florida goes and loses to Auburn in the SEC championship, or even let's just say A&M or Alabama. Let's say Alabama loses to Auburn in the SEC championship game. Even if Tennessee wins out, the SEC tournament could matter. When in years, I think we've all talked about the decisions are already made with the bracket for the most part once teams get to the SEC tournament and the Big Ten tournament. So
I haven't looked. If the
point.
SEC was talking about moving the championship game from Sunday to Saturday, it's still on Sunday right now, isn't it? for this
Correct.
year?
Yeah.
Well, then, so if you've
The
got
Big
2
12
teams.
is the only Power 5 that plays a day early on
Yeah,
Saturday.
and the SEC definitely needs to, because basically they'll just
100%.
leave it there. If you win or you lose, it's already set, because they don't want to move it and move all these other lines.
Yeah.
It's basically 2 teams. You get this slot if you lose, you get this slot if you win, and we don't care from there.
That's what it feels like. It feels like
Yes.
Friday.
Well, that is what
the committee leaves the house and they go, "We guys good? Okay, this is what happens when we don't get any upsets. Here's what happens when we get a lot of upsets.
think-
These are the 2 we submit."
Yeah, I
But there are
just think
times-
it's Saturday night they said it, and they don't have time to go back and
I hear you.
remove a ton of stuff on
Yeah,
Sunday
I agree.
afternoon.
They're
So
not
I think
moving
it's
4 lines on the S curve just
Right.
because of one outcome.
The other
yeah, so
piece
it's
that-
easier just to say, if you win, you get this seed. If you lose, you get that seed, and vice versa. Now, the trick is where that's going to be difficult. If it's Tennessee and Alabama in that last game, who cares? That makes sense. Okay.
Yes, sure.
If it's Tennessee versus some upset team that's some Cinderella, okay, that's where it runs into
Right.
trouble.
The other
But-
thing, the SEC bias or lack of bias, right? Because there's going to be people around the country that say, all right, do we let 3 SEC teams be number 1s or Houston? And if Houston takes number 1 or 2 in the SEC, can you actually put, and you made the point a couple weeks ago, can you put the 4th place SEC team as a 1 seed, right?
Yeah.
4th place in the SEC conference as a 1 seed over Houston, who wins their conference?
Yeah.
Maybe they lose in the conference tournament, so they don't get the automatic bid.
Right.
But that'll be a decision that the committee has to make. You only finished 4th in your league. Houston wins you. How can we put you as the number 1 seed over the team at
Well,
one?
you just listen to Jay Billis, who says there's never been a conference in any sport on any planet in any universe. Even in the multiverse, we've never seen a conference like the
I'm
SEC.
not one to be prisoner of the moment, but this is the greatest thing that's ever happened.
It's unbelievable. Back with Chuck Cavaliers, Jimmy Himes, Mark Pancratz 2 years ago on this show, I broke down by the numbers. We went deep on just how bad Rick Barnes' tournament history was. Even now, it stands at 28 tournaments all time. 16 of those he lost to a lower seed. He's 1-12 all time versus higher seeded teams, so he doesn't pull upsets. Thus, some folks call him second round Rick. All right. But after the last 2 years, I wanted to zoom out and compare him to the other SEC programs. We did this on the Sports Source Digital Network. I did a clip on it. We had Tyler, Will, Paige Dower, and Ryan Callahan debate it. I want these 3 to debate it, though. When you look at the last 6 seasons, let me go ahead and put up a graphic here. Just look at the last 6 seasons in the SEC. The NCAA tournament gives you, the way they divvy up cash is each round you get to counts as another point, another unit. When you add up the units for the last 6 tournaments, Tennessee hasn't missed one. Now, nobody went in COVID year. There was no tournament. But Tennessee's made the last 6 tournaments. Nobody else in the SEC has made the last 6 tournaments. And when you add up total units, Tennessee is number 1. They've had the most consistent, best NCAA tournament output of the last 6 years. Now, you can say, but Alabama made a Final Four. But Auburn made a Final Four. And if you only judge it by that, you don't care about the other 5 years, okay. But look at Auburn. Everybody I've asked this to, it's like, who do you think's number 1? And the response is always, Auburn? No. Bruce Pearl's been out 3 times in the second round, 1 time in the first round. But you're no longer connected to it because it's not Tennessee, so it doesn't hurt and it doesn't make you mad. You don't notice it. When Rick Barnes goes out, oh, you notice it. It makes you mad. But when you compare him to the other guys in the league, okay, recently, Tennessee's program's done as much in the tournament as anybody else. So with 2 Sweet 16s and Elite 8, In terms of total units. So there's two different sides to this. And I can see you arguing either side. All time, yeah, kind of second round Rick. Recently, well, that's not fair when you look around the SEC.
Right.
So I'm going to ask you guys, is second round Rick fair game or a lazy take? Chuck Cavalier.
Well, I'm going to say that there was a time when I think that was appropriate. But what was last year, Elite Eight? I mean, I'm one of these what have you done lately things. And I can remember when we were trying to decide whether Tennessee was going to play at Tennessee Tech in the NIT. So that chart right there, to me, puts it in a totally different perspective.
So you think second round Rick is a lazy take?
I think it's a lazy take based on recent history, which is more important than the whole body of work.
That's my take, because if you go in his career, he's 30-28 in the NCAA tournament. So that would be justifiable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's fair game to say second round
Yeah.
Rick.
But what he's done lately,
Yeah.
the last 6 years, as you showed, it wouldn't be necessarily accurate. So, but when I looked at his record, so he's 30-28. There are 22 coaches that I looked up that have won at least 60% of their NCAA tournament games all time.
Yeah.
And he's won 52%. Yeah. So from that, if you go all time, it's fair. If you go recent situations, I would say no.
We did this a couple of years ago when we went back and we looked at all the coaches who have winning percentages in the regular season and what they do in the tournament. There were two coaches that stood out as, man, they get to the tournament, it falls apart. It was him and Bob Huggins. And I think most people would take, well, not the off-field stuff, but I think most people would take Bob Huggins' body of work as well. He's a good coach for a lot of years. Mark Pankratz, I think a good attorney could argue that. Marcos Garza could argue that in either direction and convince me one way or the other. Is it fair game or is it a lazy take?
But I think a couple of things. One, Chuck mentioned, what have you done for me lately? I think that is affecting some of our responses right now because we've won 2 games in a row. We're coming off a big win versus Texas A&M. If we had lost, what would people be saying? Because when I walked around that arena at halftime of the Vanderbilt game, there were 2 people sitting front row, which means I have a little coin, that were saying, man, Rick, man, he's done. Like, we're ready to move on. So now, the flip side of that is when I coached at Tennessee, there was a guy at South Carolina, Darren Horn. We didn't want him to get fired. Why? Because he wasn't a very good coach.
He was the Wade Houston of South Carolina, yeah.
If you go ask SEC coaches, they want Rick to retire because he's that good. The last point that we're going to have to add another column to this slide in future years is the payroll. Because you're going to then have to look at what are these programs paying for players to get the talent, and if you're winning with best talent and you've got a high payroll, that's a different type of expectation for you to win. Because look, if the university's spending X amount of $1 million on your staff and you're not winning, but yet this program's spending $1 million on your team and they are winning, that's going to affect how fans and administration is going to feel about their coaching staffs.
That's a great point. So.
Oh, do I think he's winning?
Is he second round Rick?
No, I don't think it's a fair. I mean,
that's just modern. It's the late. What have you done for me lately is affecting you.
No, I really don't. I really don't think it's. When you look at the macro,
picture,
the big picture of what all coaches do, a lot of teams would take a second.
Well, that's true. But in terms of if you expect to be in the tournament every year, you want your team to do something. And traditionally, he's made one Final Four in 28 tournaments, which
and an Elite Eight and a couple Sweet 16s. Like, I mean, there's other things that.
There's also judging it by Tennessee standards, and I always get back. We should look at it the same way Duke does. No, you shouldn't. That's stupid. You're not Duke. That's like saying Vanderbilt should look at football the way you do. No, they shouldn't because they're not on your level.
But again, that was the case, right? Now, if you look at payroll.
Well, if NIL changes,
right?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Well,
that's
Tennessee's
why you
got a lot of money.
That's what I'm saying. So now you have to add and look at, okay, are we now one of those green bloods because of the money that we're able to spend on the roster?
Well, and trust me, I would if any of those numbers were public.
Sure.
But since we're all going by rumors and innuendos, this guy's getting paid how much? Since we don't know, it's impossible to create that column.
Kind of like Jimmy, I based it on NCAA tournament success. I'm going to hear fans grumble now and then, here and there. I based it as second round Rick, what has he done in the tournament, and not so much, during the season when you trail at halftime in a game, you come back and win.
No, but I think he's talking about the fact that you got people who, if he were going to Final Fours, you wouldn't have anybody at halftime saying that. I think would be the take. So this week, Nebraska canceled the football series with Tennessee, as you know, and we're going to let you follow along here with us as we go. It had been on the books for nearly 20 years for Tennessee and Nebraska to play in 2026 and 2027. Nebraska is going to pay Tennessee $1 million for the 2 games that they canceled. Their athletic director said that with stadium renovations going on in Lincoln, they needed the money from an 8th home game in 2027 to help cover it all, so they had to cancel both games to get rid of that 2027 game. All right. This leaves Tennessee scrambling to find a new power conference foe in 2026 and 2027 because the SEC wants everybody to play at least one. Danny White was ticked off, and boy, he wanted everyone to know about it. When the cancellation was reported by Pete Thamel, it was written that, the 2 teams have canceled this series. Danny White clicked into Twitter and wrote, "Correction, Tennessee is not canceling this series. Nebraska did. We are very disappointed that they didn't want to play these games, especially this close to 2026. All right. Then he goes and talks to the Knoxville News Sentinel, and he says, "I think it's kind of unprecedented to pull out of a home series this late with this little notice. So I'm annoyed by it. Home and home series against power conference opponents are scheduled out a decade in advance, and this one has been on the docket for like 20 years. Actually, White scheduled a home and home with Washington when he first got here, so usually about 5 to 8 years, not necessarily decades out, but still." He then went to VolQuest and summed it up with, "You really can't pull an audible this late in the game." Now, to be crystal clear, Nebraska gave Tennessee 19 months' notice, February of 25 for September of 26. That's the audible, so 19 months. And that's why I will misquote my favorite piece of literature and say, "The athletic director doth protest too much, methinks." Here is why I say that. September 21st, 2021, White and Tennessee canceled a September 2022 game with Army. That's not 19 months, that's less than 12 months. He brought in Akron instead. The 2022 Congressional Medal of Honor winners would have been honored at that game. In fact, the annual Medal of Honor Society convention had been scheduled for that week in Knoxville. So it was a big deal to cancel that one. Tennessee paid Army $500,000 per the game. Same thing Nebraska's going to pay Tennessee per game. Tennessee also put out the word at the time that the cancellation of that game had actually started under Philip Fulmer and Jeremy Pruitt. Maybe so, but when the Sentinel did a records request, they found the piece of paper canceling the series had Danny White's signature on it. And in terms of power conference teams that aren't scared to play Army, the last 3 years, Army has played Wake Forest, Syracuse, Boston College, LSU, and Notre Dame. None of those schools switched them out for Akron. Fast forward to May 16 of 2022. And what you got there, Tennessee announced that they and BYU had agreed to cancel the last game of their home and home series scheduled for 2023. 16 months out, not 19 like Nebraska gave you. You know what's more rare than a school canceling a home and home series the year before it starts? A school playing their end of a home and home series and then canceling the return game a year out. That is very rare. UT said the cancellation was mutual, but at the time, I did some extensive research, folks, real Woodward and Bernstein stuff. I went to my internet, my website, my web browser, and I looked up Salt Lake Tribune. And there I found that the Utah press made it pretty clear it was not a mutual cancellation. BYU had cleared out other games to keep the UT game as part of their deal. The AD, when asked about it, simply declined to comment on the matter. Tennessee paid BYU $2 million from ticket fees for the Virginia game. And for those of you this week who jumped on board and had fun with Nebraska and mocked them for being scared, it has nothing to do with money, it's because you're chicken. I remind you of what Danny White said when he talked about changing from BYU to Virginia. "Our fans have heard me talk about the importance of finding new revenue to grow our operating budget, and playing Virginia at Nissan Stadium is an opportunity for a net positive revenue game." The reality is, and that's what we're dealing in here, this isn't one of the news networks where I'm just going to tell you what you want to hear. I am going to trust that you're adults and you want facts, and the facts are Tennessee gave Army and BYU less notice than Nebraska gave Tennessee. If Danny White hadn't made a big noise about this, I would be sitting here today saying, boy, I don't like the fact that Nebraska did this. I didn't like it when Tennessee backed out of games. I don't like Nebraska backing out of games. But instead, because Danny White has been loud with this, I'm forced to ask, why are you so loud with this when you did the same thing? I like Danny White. I think he's best thing to happen to Tennessee in ages. We were going to do a topic on your radio show, who's the most impactful guy in your lifetime. I would put Danny White on that for what he's done. And I don't like teams backing out, so I wouldn't like Nebraska backing out of this. I don't like Nebraska backing out of this. But I also don't like very loud hypocrisy. And to me, I just ran through the notes. You gave other schools less time than they gave you. So I'm asking, what am I wrong about? And if I'm wrong, let me know.
Hey, look, I don't think you're wrong about this. I think that I ripped Tennessee when they canceled the BYU series. I ripped Nebraska when they canceled the Tennessee series. I just think, stop doing that. That's soft. You're doing it. It's cowardice. That's why you're doing it. Cowardice. The other side of it is, though, when people usually are loud on social media or are trying to give a quote about a specific thing, my initial thought, because I guess I've been doing this a while and I was trained by Jimmy Hyam, sharing an office with him for 10 years, is, okay, what are you really doing behind the scenes that you're using this noise to give cover for? And so I don't know that Danny White's even that mad about this with Nebraska, but it's a way to gain some points with the fan base by kind of being a populist and raising a little heck about the fact that Nebraska canceled this series.
Right. And that's what I wonder about, is the populace.
Well, two points on this. I think that his peeved meter was raised because the SEC and the Big Ten are trying to form this alliance. And I think he was bothered by that. I'm not saying it's justified. I think that's a part of why he came out so loudly. Here's the other thing, too. People around the country don't care when or who the AD was when Tennessee canceled some of these games. They canceled North Carolina game. So they're going to look at Tennessee like, what are you whining about? You're a program that not only did this to BYU and Army, but North Carolina. So why are you complaining? So I don't think he's going to get much sympathy nationally.
In Nebraska, you wonder how much their coach Matt Rule is behind this, and they're using it as the guise of stadium renovation and expansion. So our stadium can't hold enough for us to play Tennessee, but we can book, Miami. What is it? Miami to come in here. We can book Bowling Green to come in.
Yeah.
So the late notice. Hey, Danny Fee's charging a talent fee now, right? I think he's speaking to the people who pay that talent fee. That we're charging more. But now what are you going to do now?
That's it.
From a Nebraska standpoint, I think this is Troy Dannon, who has not had much of a backbone since replacing Trey Veverts and letting kind of Matt Rule just do what he wants to do, from the crazy comments about canceling spring practice. They're going to come in and get our guys. Yeah. And Dannon's been kind of like, I'm going to do what I want. From a Danny White standpoint, I take the Army standpoint as, all right, this was already in motion. I'm the new AD. I'm just going to come in and sign off on this while I'm still getting comfortable. Not that it's excusable, but that's how I'm taking that.
There's nothing for you to work on in the Army game, right?
Yeah, exactly. The BYU game, super soft. Super soft, especially when you already got your home game. I made gentleman's agreement, and I understand it's still dollars and cents. There's no business for you not to go out and return the favor in Provo.
And it does make me wonder, though, all of this happening, are we going to get that Big Ten SEC scheduling partnership?
That's what I
think you want, because some schools don't want it now. Also, what you do is lose a home game. And if it's all about having the home game, and you go play some, Chucky Doak or Powell Valley, then just to get a home game, then are we really going to see us go to 9 and then people lose a home game every other year?
Chucky Doak may be my favorite name in the world.
Thank you.
I just love Chucky Doak.
I used to be called that when I was young.
But I was just going to say, the issue, one, on the Army thing, they didn't have anything to work on. Neither did Notre Dame, LSU, Syracuse, BC, or Wake Forest, who didn't chicken out against Army. Right. And none of those schools, to my knowledge, had the Congressional Medal of Honor Society coming to that town that week that you canceled on. But I think Chuck hit on it. I think Danny White enjoys he can go on Twitter, and hashtag Vol Twitter gets behind him on anything. And he likes, they're doing this to us. Yeah.
Get the popular
and everybody goes, yeah. My problem is, I think Vol fans should get behind him. I think he's been an excellent athletic director. I don't think you should get behind him when he's not telling you the full when he's being hypocritical. Yeah. I don't like the fact that Tennessee went out, this is crap. Well, no, you did the same thing. Right. Oh, the problem is, I don't know how many people are saying, they're just going to say, I don't care. It's still crap because it's Tennessee. That kind of stuff, it bothers me when my Patriots fans do it. It bothers me when Celtics fans do it. It bothers me when politics do it. It's like, at some point, you have to be able to say, okay, he's my guy and I love him. You're going too far because you did the same thing to this other school. I'm not going to go rip Nebraska on Facebook when we did the same thing to BYU. Unfortunately, I live in la-la land, and that's not how this world works, where we live in silos.
Where you're going to go, I'm going to go different directions.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you want to. Could this all be a work? And where Tennessee's about to have a year without a power conference opponent, They've already worked something out with maybe a former offensive coordinator
We'll get
here.
there. Yeah, we'll get there.
And this is all just let's create some noise and then.
Do you really think he's sitting there playing that 3D
I don't know that
chess?
he's doing it. It's somebody else doing
Well,
it.
he's the one
that's
that-
involved in marketing.
Well-
that this is a good way to market this.
I'm not as cynical as you are when it comes to okay.
I'm
Now
very
we're going to go out and we're going to create this false flag operation. I don't buy the conspiracy, but anyway, maybe.
Well, I think you may be upset, but I think it's also we need the noise to make sure because something happened because Alex Golesh tweeted right behind Danny White saying that about Play Us. I think some of this might be cover for that.
Okay, end it.
Really looking forward to a bunch of my friends who live in Seattle when we have to tell them, oh, by the way, the Washington series has been canceled as well. So I'll wait for the future show for us to talk about that because I was looking forward to the 29-30
Well, I
back
don't
and forth with the
know.
Huskies.
But now people are going to think they're actually canceling.
No,
it.
no, they're
That's
not
odd.
canceling it, but I just feel what down the road's going to happen where you're going to eliminate all the juicy competition that's supposed to be coming down the pike.
Who are you going to get to fill? Yeah. Who are you going to get to fill that spot? You're getting
We're gonna
$500
get there in
grand
the
for
next
each
segment
game.
if we'll shut up now.
Setting it up, baby.
I do wonder if Greg Sankey's had any conversation with the Big Ten commissioner about this. I'd be
I
interested
don't
in that.
know. I just to me that they were supposed to talk about a Big Ten SEC possible scheduling factor, and then
Right,
they went
right.
to New Orleans and met this week,
Yeah.
and it was immediately not on the table. So
Yeah.
it was not even considered. So I don't know if that's what made Danny White mad that it wasn't considered or that it was considered and they didn't talk about it seriously. I don't know. Using the website fbschedules.com, look, we don't have access to the AD's official folder that they all have, and they can go and see who's got open dates. FB Schedules does this for a living. That's their whole focus. They're usually pretty good. So take it with a grain of salt, but we're going to look at, I went back and looked at all the teams, the power teams, who are available on September 12th, 2026 and September 11th, 2027. That's when Nebraska's games that they replaced are, so we'll assume that's where Tennessee's dates were. Let's take a look at who would be available in terms of power conference teams. You've got Houston would be available both years, but they play Oregon State and LSU. They got an opening, but would they want to play LSU and Tennessee both years? So Houston's available. TCU, they got an opening both years, but they also have games with North Carolina and Stanford, but they want two Power 5 foes. USC, wide open in 2026. You could do a neutral site game with USC. They don't have an opening in 2027 because I'm going to assume they're going to get Notre Dame on there, redo that deal. Washington, you got them. Tyler mentioned it. You're playing them at 29-30. Danny White's already got a deal with them that he cut. They're open, according to FBschedules.net. Do you want to go and schedule Washington for 4 years in the next 5? You got Florida State. They've got an opening, but look, they're playing Alabama, Florida, and Notre Dame. I don't think they're going to add Tennessee to that. Tennessee wouldn't go close to any of those schools if you had them as non-conference. And then they got Florida, Georgia the next year, but still, they got an opening. Syracuse, would they want to play two Power 5 teams? They've already got Notre Dame and Penn State. I don't know. Notre Dame, right there.
Does
According
Notre
to-
Dame want to play another Power 5 school because they don't do that anymore either?
Yeah.
Their schedule, okay, yeah. My question goes Tennessee. I think Tennessee would be less likely to schedule Notre Dame than the other way around.
I agree.
But okay. Who do you think, if that, or do you look at it and say, it's going to be USF
It's
and,
gonna be
and Alex
USF.
Ghosh, and just, you're not going to play one, and it's already done? You think it's already done?
I think it's
and
already
this is all a
done.
conspiracy
The
theory.
reason why is because this is how I would handle it if I was stuck in that position. I would play exactly this game. I would have used Meta's social medias instead of Twitter, but I would have done exactly this
What is the
entire
point
song
of
and
that?
dance.
Why not just announce it?
It just juices people up. That's why. And it's easy cover for what you want to do, and it creates a narrative in the mind of the casual fan, and that's something that you're trying to do. I would do it exactly the way Tennessee's doing it. I just would have used Instagram.
I live in a conspiracy theory world, and I'm not a conspiracist. It's bad.
What? I think it's marketing. It's not a conspiracy. It's marketing.
Okay.
I'd go USC or Notre Dame because biased Tyler Ivins has always wanted to see USC and Notre Dame.
I thought you're the guy who would schedule Central Connecticut State if you could. You don't believe in playing anybody tough, right?
Well, no, the fan base on our show believes garbage for all 12 games just get us to the playoff.
Yeah.
Me, I would love to be able to see, even if you went neutral site.
Yeah.
I would love to see the Trojans come to Nashville, and I'd love to see maybe Tennessee play at SoFi. And then you get that neutral site. What's going to end up happening? Maybe because I rub elbows with them for 4 hours a day, I'm 100% on this bring it to the Bay thing, South Florida. It's bulls up. I really think it's going to happen.
It's going to be dangerous for Tennessee. They may think that's not dangerous, but let's see them go lose to Alex Golesh and USF. I don't know that they'll do that. I don't know that I'll buy that because that seems dangerous to me, and I don't think they like scheduling dangerously. But I may be wrong. Who do you think they should do if those are correct?
I think they should go play Notre Dame first. If not Notre Dame, Southern Cal.
There it is.
Yeah.
And I think you got to decide, are you going to do a neutral site game or games? Are you going to play home and home or whatever? First, you got to decide how you're going to fill this void. Or if it's going to be 9 SEC games in 2026, whatever it is.
There you go.
But I would go Southern Cal.
Yes.
I think that would be
For a neutral site the first year?
Yes, a really entertaining game.
I think you go home and home with Southern Cal. You play
Well,
them
they
here.
can't their second
And then
year.
cancel it.
They can't in 2027. You could play one down the road.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and
right.
then cancel that one.
Yeah. But they're not available in 2027.
Not to go through the history books, I've always had a thing with USC because Tennessee, 0-4 lifetime against Trojans.
Yeah.
I'd like to see them renew something they haven't done in some time.
They haven't played since I was a little kid, right?
Last time, guess who was
Yeah,
the
I was
senior?
in the building the
We
last
just
time they
talked
played
about
them
it.
here. I was little.
Who was on that Trojans team last time the Vols in Tennessee
Anthony
played? Or the
Munoz.
Vols and Trojans? Ronnie Lott.
Yeah, Ronnie Lott,
old-
Anthony
Munoz.
Jeff Fisher.
Yeah.
There's a ton of guys.
Yeah.
Bring back the Trojans.
I guess Tulane's not available.
We'll see what they say. My guess is you're not going to see anything close to USC or Notre Dame. I think maybe Houston or TCU, if they would agree to it. Washington.
Yeah, but
I mean,
you're already
you've already
playing.
got a deal with them. Can
Yeah.
you just expand
that
it
up.
out? But it's hard to schedule these things right now because are they going to try and pick up this SEC Big Ten thing down the road?
Right.
Yep.
Who knows? It's college football's crazy. Poll results, if we could. Zakai Ziegler is your winner. Boy, he ran away with it. Wow. 12% went to character and moxie and the cut of their jib. 8% to defense. 25% to Rick Barnes, but your favorite thing about this Volunteers team is Zakai Ziegler, 55%. And I'm guessing if you ask Rick Barnes, he would say, take my 25% and put it on to Zakai Ziegler. Well, he'd split it between Ziegler and defense. All right, very good. Thanks for playing along. We always appreciate you taking part in our polls. The SEC, everybody has their thumbs up, thumbs down. We usually do this only in football season with our VFL, so these are very special. The SEC and Big Ten are talking about changing the playoff format this year. Under one format, they've discussed the selection committee would just rank the teams. The seeding would go by the rankings. They would not pick teams. Everything would be automatic, and let's show you what that means right here. It would be a 14-team playoff. 4 automatic bids to the SEC, 4 to the Big Ten, 2 from the ACC, 2 from the Big 12, 1 from the highest-ranked group of 6 conference teams, and 1 at-large bid, which is kind of the open door to Notre Dame if they can get it. So whatever the highest-ranked team that's not already in, they would get in. All right, and the committee wouldn't be picking anybody. They'd just be doing rankings, and that would handle it. So let's come out. You guys tell me thumbs up, thumbs down on this plan. We got thumbs up from this. We got thumbs up from everybody but Jimmy. All right,
boy.
Jimmy, why don't you like it?
Because I don't think you should have automatic qualifying bids from those 2 conferences. You might have 5 more deserving SEC teams and only 3 from the Big Ten. You might have 5 from the Big Ten, 3 from the SEC. If you lowered it to 3, I'd go with it. But to give 4 to each conference, I am totally opposed to that.
So who wants to argue with him?
Yeah, my concern is this. I can't trust the committee in the beauty pageant because clearly Kirk Herbstreit can tell them who they're going to put as the 4th team. We've seen it happen twice. Yeah. So I don't trust the committee. I know they're not watching the games they say they watch because I watch 10 football games a week and it takes 30 hours a week. You can't be Michigan's AD and watch enough football games to actually know or even have an educated opinion on who those teams are. So I like it being taken out of the committee's hands and it not being the beauty pageant.
Quick.
Ward Manuel and Boo Corrigan have been put in impossible situations. And because, to Will's point, again, it just takes 1 or 2 guys, Billis during basketball season, Herbie during football, it can get out of hand.
Superfan Charles.
One thing I hated, the committee was way too much eye test, that they knew more than
There it is.
everybody else, or just a computerized ranking with 6 or 7 criteria. Let's go play. Whatever that shows, let's go play.
All right, very good. We got another thing. This is an even bigger deal. This is more crazy. Let's go ahead and put this up. The SEC and the Big Ten started talking about, well, what if we have a championship game? Well, what if we gave those teams buys and we had other games to play in? And then one of the things on the table for the SEC, this is the most extreme, but it's on the table. It would be the first place team in the SEC would play the 8th place team in the SEC for a spot to get in the playoff. Second played 7th, third plays 6th, fourth played 5th. Everybody gets in, whoever wins that. If that was in place last season, it would have meant that Tennessee wouldn't have been in the playoff. They'd have had to play Alabama again and beat them a second time for the right to make the playoff. Texas would have had to beat South Carolina. Georgia would have had to beat LSU. Missouri would have had to beat Ole Miss. Again, this isn't approved yet, but it is on the table. It is being discussed. 4 more playoff games that you can sell to ESPN, which makes me think this will be the thing they choose. Thumbs up, thumbs down on that.
Thumbs down on this model.
Yes.
Okay, so Tyler's the only one that likes that model.
Because I like chaos, and I like being able to be proven.
The Joker.
The bitch, dude. Why not? Go out there and put the best product on the field. If you are, in fact, the best conference in college football, put your best soldiers on the front line and go, prove it to me. That's how you can really identify who a true champion is, and it still makes the regular
Who's
season
in
mean
charge
something.
of the tiebreakers in this system? What are the
They've
tiebreakers?
already
Russell
set
over.
before. They've already got the tiebreakers.
You have to leg wrestle Will in
Be
the
the same
parking lot.
tiebreaker. I think that most people here would have said, I'm okay with this. But when I put Tennessee, Alabama on there, I bet Tennessee fans went,
Hey.
I don't like that.
I was okay with the other model that Ross Dellinger threw out of 1 and 2 are already in, and then 3 through 6 play it out for the final 2 spots. I'm okay with that. I don't like going that much.
The problem I have with it is if you do this, you're then getting to where college kids are going to play a 17-game season, the same as NFL.
Right.
And at what point, you saw Carson Beck get hurt in one of these games.
Yeah.
At what point, also, if I'm a coach, I hate this. Because if I'm the number 1 team and I lose to the 8th seed and I watch the 8th seed go into the playoff, they're going to skin me alive. I had a whole
'em.
regular season that meant nothing. Now you've turned into college basketball.
You brought a poet to the table about 30 minutes ago. Can I bring a poet to the table? Ric Flair, to be the man, beat the man. Beat Alabama.
You already did the woo.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that renders your regular season basically
It really
meaningless.
does. Yeah,
it
You
does
have-
something.
it's
And South Carolina's pretty hot at the end of the year.
Yeah, they were.
Okay,
As
very
the
good.
8th seed.
Folks, welcome back to the Sports Source. Here's how you can follow us. First of all, we're on our normal YouTube channel, the original YouTube channel, which you can see this show on. If you miss it or if you're out of town, that's how you can catch it. Or you can go to our new Facebook page. Well, you got the digital network, of course. You can follow us there on YouTube as well, at Sports Source Digital Network. If you like this show, and I know a lot of you do, I get emails that are like, well, I wish you were 2 hours. Well, now we are. We're actually more than that. Go to the Sports Source Digital Network on our YouTube channel. Subscribe there, and it just alerts you when more of our free content is up. And you can follow us on Facebook. We just launched this thing. I don't know how many followers we have, but go ahead and check out the Facebook page. I'm not even on Facebook. So this page is, but I'm not. So I can't tell you how many people are there. Just check it out, our new Facebook page on Sports Source Digital Network. That'll tell you what we're posting on the YouTube channel as well. And as always, I appreciate you. The show, we started this thing in 2003, and it has made it to 2025, and that's all due to you. And I say thank you for your help there. Now I want you to help us with our Sports Source Digital Network. All right. Tennessee staff is complete. Willie Martinez got a contract extension in the secondary. Lavorne coach Chop Harbin has been promoted to outside linebackers coach to replace Mike Eckler, who left for evil Nebraska. Evan Crabtree has been promoted to special teams coordinator. He was a special teams analyst. Heupel, once again, promoted from within just about everywhere he could. Show of thumbs. Gentlemen, do you prefer that approach to bringing in new blood? Do you prefer the just keep the continuity? And we got a bunch of no's. Everybody thinks new blood is occasionally necessary.
You need another set of eyes on that offense because it's struggling right now. And so the idea, and I also don't need 2 linebackers coaches for 2 linebackers. Does every human get their own in the linebacking corps, get their own individual coach? That doesn't make it, as far as, and I understand that was someone you wanted to keep, so you just brought him there to kind of be, I guess, the heir apparent on the defensive line. I think that you needed someone else on the offensive side. I think that you needed to allocate your resources a little better for this individual year.
I think they need 5 offensive line coaches. One for each.
Left guard is different than right guard.
Here's the thing to me. So you went outside your comfort zone box to hire in Tim Banks. How well has that worked out?
Really well.
Okay.
Fantastic.
You went outside the box a little bit to hire Alex Golish.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say you miss his expertise, you miss his game planning,
Yes.
you miss his coaching.
Yes.
I think going outside your comfort zone sometimes is beneficial, and those are 2, in my opinion,
Right.
good examples.
Well, I think you need to occasionally, right? Because I think the fan perception, are you up-tempo or are you not up-tempo? Why do you struggle on the road? You need somebody to come in and help you with that. The fan perception is maybe it's not a weak link, but your offensive coordinator position could use an upgrade. When you look at Tennessee and Ohio State in that game, was that not a huge mismatch? Ohio State, Chip Kelly, offensive coordinator. You just have to. You got to tell me. Are you looking at qualified candidates outside the program?
I agree with Chuck. I don't necessarily think that it's. Look, I'm not saying the people you hired aren't worth it. They may be great hires, but I just think that there is, on this show, we are always trying to bring in new blood. It's good to have you guys have joined in the last couple of years. It's good to have new people into the mix. It just brings a different perspective.
Right.
I think that's good in any organization to occasionally bring somebody from the outside to give a different set of eyes, a different take on things.
The Ryan Day Chip Kelly angle from years prior at New Hampshire that came back to be beneficial for the Buckeyes in this championship run. I understand wanting to keep your fraternity and your friends close, tight-knit, because you want to win together and you lose together. But yes, as Will's already pointed out, and not to even sit there and regurgitate what you guys have already laid out, but this could use a little bit of new blood, especially in angles that on the defensive side, you're not as gung-ho on. That's a Tim Banks thing. Maybe you let Tim Banks be able to
Also,
go out and
you're
find
good
you
there,
with it.
and your problems are on the offensive side of the ball.
Exactly. I'm a little promoting from within on the offensive side, Alec Ablin at tight end, totally get that. Be able to go out there, wide receivers coach and some of the other positions promote from within, totally get that because that's your expertise on that side of the ball. Defense, got to do your
But
thing.
doesn't it remind you a little bit of Coach Fulmer?
We got to go.